The moment you seek a woman's approval, you've already surrendered your power. Think about it. When she pulls away, what's your first instinct? To explain yourself, to justify your actions, to prove your worth. That reaction. It's the psychological cage that keeps you trapped in her frame while she controls the entire dynamic without lifting a finger. Every text you send seeking validation, every explanation you offer unprompted, every time you adjust your behavior to please her, not building attraction, you're systematically destroying it through mechanisms Machiavelli identified 5 centuries ago. In the next 20 minutes, I'll reveal 6 Machiavellian principles that operate beneath every male-female interaction. These aren't theories. They're power dynamics that women intuitively understand and men remain dangerously ignorant about. By the end of this video, you'll see the invisible architecture of attraction that's been working against you your entire life. When Machiavelli wrote The Prince in 1513, he wasn't just crafting a political manual. He was documenting the brutal laws of power that govern all human interaction, laws that operate regardless of context, regardless of era, regardless of whether you acknowledge them. These principles apply to kingdoms and corporations, negotiations and relationships, political alliances and romantic dynamics. Power doesn't care about the arena. It follows the same ruthless patterns everywhere. But here's what you need to understand. Modern society has spent the last 70 years convincing you these laws don't apply to dating. You've been fed a sanitized narrative. Be nice, be yourself, communicate openly, show vulnerability. Meanwhile, women respond to an entirely different language. The language of status, of scarcity, of strategic unpredictability. This creates what I call the nice guy paradox. You're told that kindness and transparency build attraction, so you deploy them generously. Then you watch confused as she gravitates toward men who operate by completely opposite principles. Men who seem to understand something you don't. They do. They understand Machiavellian power dynamics, whether consciously or through instinct. They recognize that attraction isn't negotiated through reason, it's triggered through strategic value demonstration and emotional stimulation. The 6 laws I'm about to reveal exist in a space most men never access because confronting them requires accepting an uncomfortable truth. The mating game operates on dominance hierarchies, not fairness, on perception management, not authenticity, on strategic calculation, not emotional transparency. Women don't openly discuss these dynamics because doing so would neutralize their effectiveness. It's the same reason magicians don't explain their tricks. The power exists in the mystery, in the gap between what you see and what's actually happening. But there's something even darker about these laws that we need to address. Because once you see them, you can't unsee them, and what you do with that knowledge will determine whether you become the player or remain the played. Law 1. The law of strategic absence. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must never make himself too available to his subjects, for familiarity breeds contempt. In male-female dynamics, your accessibility directly correlates to your perceived value. The more available you are, the lower your status registers in her neural calculus. Here's the psychological mechanism. The human brain assigns value through scarcity. When you're constantly available, responding immediately to texts, always free when she wants to see you, dropping your plans to accommodate hers, you're signaling low demand. Low demand signals low value. Low value triggers the opposite of attraction. Women interpret abundant availability as evidence that other women aren't competing for your time. This subconsciously communicates that you're not a scarce resource, worth securing. Meanwhile, strategic absence creates the opposite effect. When your attention is intermittent and unpredictable, it suggests other priorities, other options. A full life that she represents only one part of. Let me give you a concrete example. I watched this play out with a colleague who dated a woman for 3 months. In the beginning, he was moderately responsive, took hours to reply, saw her twice a week maximum, maintained his gym schedule and social life. She pursued aggressively, called him constantly, initiated plans, showed high investment. Then he made the critical error. He started believing the connection justified more availability. He began responding within minutes, seeing her for 5 times a week, canceling plans with friends to spend more time with her. He thought he was building intimacy. Within 6 weeks, her investment dropped to near zero. She became distant, started mentioning other men, eventually ended things, saying she didn't feel the spark anymore. What actually happened? He flooded the market with his attention, crashing its value. The spark she mentioned was never about chemistry, it was about the tension created by his scarcity. When he eliminated that tension through the attraction mechanism shut down. The power dynamic here is fundamental. Attention is your currency in the early stages of any dynamic. When you spend it freely, you devalue it. When you ration it strategically, you increase its worth. This isn't manipulation, it's understanding basic value economics that govern human desire. Most men get this backwards. They think more availability demonstrates more interest, which should logically create more attraction. But attraction isn't logical. It's a dominance hierarchy response. Scarcity signals high status. Abundance signals low status. Her brain isn't designed to rationalize this, it simply responds. Now, most people stop here, thinking strategic absence is the complete picture. But that's why they fail. There's a second layer that makes this principle actually work, and it has to do with how you occupy the time when you're absent. That's where the next law comes in. Law 2. The law of frame control. Machiavelli understood that perceived reality matters more than actual reality. In The Prince, he writes that men judge more by their eyes than by their hands. They see what you appear to be, but few feel what you are. In male-female dynamics, this translates to frame control, whose interpretation of reality dominates the interaction. Here's the darker psychological mechanism. Every interaction contains a power negotiation about whose frame prevails. When she suggests you're moving too fast and you immediately adjust your behavior, you've entered her frame. When she tests you with manufactured drama and you respond with emotional reasoning, you've entered her frame. When she questions your choices and you start explaining yourself, you've entered her frame. The moment you're operating inside her interpretation of reality, defending or justifying your position, you've lost. Because the frameholder controls the interaction, and the frameholder is always the higher status party. Consider this scenario. A man takes a woman on a third date. Afterwards she texts, "I had fun, but I'm not sure we're looking for the same thing." Most men immediately enter her frame. They respond with paragraphs explaining their intentions, seeking clarification about what she wants, trying to negotiate a mutual understanding. This is frame surrender. She introduced uncertainty, and he accepted the burden of resolving it. A man who understands frame control responds differently. "No worries, take care," then goes silent. He doesn't enter the negotiation. He doesn't seek to understand her frame or defend his own. He simply acknowledges her statement and withdraws attention, applying Law 1. Within Law 2, what happens next reveals everything. In 70% of cases, she re-engages within 3 days. Why? Because his refusal to enter her frame and compete for her approval flipped the power dynamic. She expected negotiation, explanation, pursuit. His indifference triggered scarcity, anxiety, and forced her to question whether she misjudged his value. Frame control operates on a simple principle: the person least affected by the outcome holds the power. When you demonstrate through action that you're comfortable walking away, that her approval isn't necessary for your self-perception, that you won't negotiate your value, you become the frame holder by default. This extends to every micro-interaction. When she's late and offers no apology, and acts annoyed that you mentioned IT, that's a frame battle. Weak men accept a frame that being bothered by disrespect is insecure. Strong men hold frame. Your time management isn't my concern, but my time isn't flexible. Then they withdraw attention proportionally. If you're still watching, you're already ahead of 90% who clicked away because this makes them uncomfortable. They want tactics that let them be nice and still win. But power dynamics don't reward niceness, they reward frame dominance. The next principle is where it gets truly dangerous, because it involves weaponizing what most men consider their weakness. Law 3, the law of strategic indifference. Machiavelli observed that it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. In romantic dynamics, this translates to a counterintuitive truth: displaying too much interest too early triggers avoidance, while calibrated indifference triggers pursuit. The psychological mechanism here cuts deep. Women are biologically wired to assess mate value through social proof and pre-selection. When you demonstrate high investment before she earned it, you signaled that you don't have better options. This registers as low mate value. But when you demonstrate measured indifference, maintaining emotional distance while she'll invest, you signal abundance. High value men have options, so they're naturally more selective and less emotionally available. This creates what we call the uncertainty effect in attraction. Moderate uncertainty about where you stand creates obsessive thinking patterns. She thinks about you more when she's not sure you're thinking about her. She values your attention more when it's not guaranteed. She invests more when she's uncertain whether that investment will be reciprocated. Let me contrast two approaches to the same situation. A woman you've been seeing for 3 weeks says she needs space to figure out what she wants. Weak response: I understand. Take whatever time you need. I really like you and want this to work, so just let me know when you're ready to talk. I'll be here. This screams scarcity. It telegraphs that he's willing to wait indefinitely because he has no better options. It hands her complete control while demonstrating zero standards. Strategic indifference response: sure, then nothing. No follow-up, no check-ins. Actual indifference backed by action. He doesn't wait, he continues his life assuming it's over until proven otherwise. The first man will wait for weeks while she explores other options, using him as an emotional safety net. The second man will typically hear from her within 5 to 7 days, because his indifference created genuine loss anxiety. She thought she was exercising power by creating distance, but his authentic non-reaction revealed that the power dynamic wasn't what she assumed. This is where you need to be careful, because strategic indifference only works when it's genuine. Women have extraordinarily sensitive detection mechanisms for fake disinterest. If you're seething with resentment while pretending not to care, she's sensed the incongruence. If you're checking her social media obsessively while ignoring her texts, your energy betrays you. Real indifference comes from abundance mentality, the internalized understanding that she's one option among many, that your value doesn't depend on her validation, that you genuinely are fine with or without her. This can't be performed, it must be embodied. That's why weak men can't deploy this law successfully. They're too invested in the outcome. They need her approval too badly. So their attempts at indifference come across as butthurt withdrawal which triggers contempt rather than attraction. But knowing these first 3 laws isn't enough. You need to understand how they combine with the next principle, which deals with something women explicitly test for in every interaction. Law 4. The law of unreactive strength in the prince. Machiavelli warns that a ruler who responds emotionally to every slight, every criticism, every challenge appears weak and invites further attacks. In male-female dynamics, your emotional reactivity is constantly being tested. Every test is a power probe determining whether you're governed by your emotions or whether you govern them. This is where most men catastrophically fail. A woman says something provocative, questions your choices, brings up another man, withdraws affection, suddenly, and you react. You get defensive, you get angry, you get anxious, you explain, you pursue, you seek reassurance. Every emotional reaction is a status surrender. It demonstrates that she controls your emotional state, which means she's higher in the dominance hierarchy. The person who controls the emotional temperature of the interaction is always the dominant party. Watch how this plays out. She mentions casually that her ex texted her. Weak men immediately react. What did he want? What did you say? Why is he still texting you? This response does multiple things simultaneously, reveals insecurity, demonstrates possessiveness without having earned exclusivity, and most critically, shows that her words control his emotional state. Unreactive strength looks different, okay? And then he continues the previous conversation or changes the subject entirely. No emotion, no probing, no validation that this information deserves attention. His non-reaction sends a clear message: I'm not competing with ghosts, and your attempts to create jealousy don't affect my frame. 70% of the time, she'll bring it up again, trying to get the reaction she expected. You're not bothered that he's texting me. The weak man takes the bait here. Should I be? Are you still interested in him? He's entered her frame again. Unreactive strength. I don't control who texts you. I control whether I invest my time in someone who wants to be here. Then he withdraws attention by changing the subject, by ending the conversation, by creating physical distance. He's not angry, he's not insecure, he's simply applying consequences to frame violation without emotional charge. This is the principle women find most difficult to manipulate around. Emotional reactions, anger, jealousy, anxiety, excessive happiness all provide handles they can grab to steer your behavior. But when you're genuinely unreactive, when your emotional state remains stable regardless of what she says or does, you become unpredictable. Unpredictability in a high-status frame creates fascination. Most men misunderstand this law as stoicism or emotional unavailability. That's not it. You can express positive emotions, excitement, enjoyment, when they're genuine responses to positive stimuli. What you never do is react emotionally to tests, provocations, or withdraw. You maintain frame regardless of what she introduces to disturb it. And here's what Machiavelli never explicitly wrote, but understood. The person who needs the interaction least has all the power. When your emotional state isn't dependent on her behavior, when you're genuinely unreactive because you know your value exists independently of her recognition of I too have achieved something most men never access, you've become outcome independent. And outcome independence is the ultimate power position in any dynamic, because it makes you immune to manipulation. She can't control what doesn't react to her control attempts. But there's a fifth law that weaponizes this even further. Law 5, the law of strategic silence. Machiavelli wrote that wise men speak because they have something to say. Fools speak because they have to say something. In male-female power dynamics, your silence is often more powerful than your words. Every word you speak is a potential frame violation, a potential status surrender, a potential display of neediness. Most men talk themselves out of attraction. They explain, they fill comfortable silences with nervous chatter. They volunteer information she didn't ask for. They justify decisions that don't require justification. Every unnecessary word is a micro-loss in the power dynamic. Women, by contrast, understand silence as a power tool. When she goes cold for 3 days, then returns with no explanation. That silence held more frame control than any paragraph she could have written. The silence made you think about her. The silence created uncertainty. The silence forced you to wonder about your status in her world. Strategic silence operates on 3 levels. First, silence after statements of interest. When she says she likes you, misses you, wants to see you, weak men immediately reciprocate and amplify. I miss you too. I've been thinking about you constantly. This is value deflation. Strategic silence, cool or nothing at all. Let her wonder whether you feel the same. Second, silence in response to tests. When she says something designed to provoke reaction, comparing you to other men, questioning your plans. Withdrawing warm strategic silence is often the strongest response. No defense, no explanation. Just unreactive silence that forces her to sit with the fact that her probe failed. Third, silence in relationship negotiation, when she wants to have the talk about where things are going. Weak men see this as a problem requiring immediate resolution. They enter her frame and negotiate. Strategic men recognize this as a power play. I'm not having that conversation right now, followed by a subject change or attention withdrawal. You don't negotiate your investment timeline on her schedule. The integration of all 5 laws creates a unified system. You're strategically absent, Law 1, which preserves value. You maintain frame control, Law 2, refusing to operate in her interpretation of reality. You demonstrate calibrated indifference, Law 3, signaling abundance. You remain unreactive to tests, Law 4, proving emotional independence. And you deploy strategic silence, Law 5, letting your absence of words create more impact than weak men create with paragraphs. Now, some will say this is manipulation, but power doesn't care about labels. These are descriptive laws, not prescriptive ethics. They describe what actually creates attraction versus what you've been told should create attraction. The world is divided into those who understand how power actually operates and those who wish it operated differently. Which one will you be? The 6th and final law is the most dangerous, because it requires you to do something that goes against every instinct society has programmed into you. Principle 6 hours 19 minutes and 0 seconds to 2030. Law 6. The law of calculated walking away. Machiavelli's ultimate principle. A prince must be willing to lose everything to maintain his power, because the appearance of desperation is more destructive than actual loss. In male-female dynamics, your willingness to walk away is the foundation of all other principles. If you're not genuinely willing to lose her, none of the previous 5 laws work. She sensed the attachment beneath your strategic absence. She'll feel your investment underneath your frame control. She'll detect the fear behind your indifference. But when you've internalized that, you will walk away from disrespect, from low investment, from frame violations, when that's not a bluff, but a genuine standard. Everything changes. You become unmovable. And unmovable men trigger a biological response in women that abundant, eager men never access. This isn't about manipulation tactics. It's about genuine abundance mentality backed by ruthless standards. You don't walk away to make her chase. You walk away because you have options, because your time is finite, because low investment people don't get high investment access to your life. The moment she senses you would genuinely be fine without her, that your happiness isn't dependent on her presence, that you're willing to exercise the nuclear option rather than tolerate disrespect, you've achieved the ultimate power position. Most men never reach this point because they're too afraid of loss. They cling to mediocre situations because they don't believe they can generate better options. That fear makes them manipulable. That fear makes every other principle ineffective. Here's how you integrate this immediately. Step 1. Audit your availability this week. If you're responding to texts within minutes, you're demonstrating scarcity. Add 2-hour minimum delays. If you're seeing her more than twice a week early on, reduce frequency. Step 2. Identify your last frame surrender. When did you explain yourself unprompted? When did you enter her interpretation of reality? Next time that situation occurs, respond with silence or indifference rather than justification. Step 3. Practice strategic silence. Next time she says something that would normally trigger explanation or reassurance, say nothing. Let the silence do the work. Step 4. Establish one hard boundary this week. Something you will walk away from, then demonstrate you meant it when tested. Step 5. Cultivate genuine abundance. Talk to 3 new women this week. Not to make anyone jealous, to internalize that options exist, which makes you genuinely less attached to outcomes. You now know what 99% of men will never understand. These aren't theories, they're operational principles that govern every male-female dynamic, whether you acknowledge them or not. Most men will watch this and do nothing. They'll nod along, maybe feel uncomfortable, then return to the same behaviors that have been failing. They'll keep over-explaining, keep being too available, keep surrendering frame, keep reacting emotionally, keep staying in situations they should walk away from. That's why they stay powerless. That's why they watch confused as women choose men who operate by these principles instead. But you're different. You watch 20 minutes of uncomfortable truth because some part of you recognizes that nice guys don't finish last by accident. They finish last because they're playing a completely different game than the men who win. If this resonates with the part of you that's tired of supplicating for approval, tired of pretending these dynamics don't exist, tired of losing interactions you don't even realize are power in negotiations, subscribe, because this channel exists for men ready to see reality as it operates, not as they wish it would. The 6 Machiavellian laws you learned today aren't about being cruel. They're about being strategic. They're about understanding that attraction responds to power dynamics, not fairness. That desire follows status hierarchies, not equal partnerships. That women respond to what you do, not what you say. The choice is yours. But remember, ignorance is not bliss, it's slavery. You can continue believing the comfortable lies society tells you about attraction, or you can operate in reality. One path leads to confusion and repeated failure. The other leads to power. Welcome to the game. Now, play it.